Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of 410 Sports Talk. I am James Haskell, along with my co-host Glenn Martin, and a full show tonight. We're really excited to get into it, and we're glad you guys are here. Of course, this is Thursday. We missed. We took a day off on Tuesday. Every once in a while, we need a day off. I was out traveling, and Glenn was busy doing his thing with the family and work and everything else, so we decided to take a day off. But we're glad you guys are back. We're looking forward to it. And tonight, Glenn, we're going to be talking about the NFL draft. Of course, hang in there, guys, because we're going to be talking Lamar. We got to get our weekly update.
As usual,
like that. Yeah,
we'll be talking the Lamar saga.
Yeah, which never.
And apparently, I might be the secret.
You're Yeah.
I'm Lamar's secret confidant who's reaching out to teams, apparently, according to the chat. It's me the whole time.
Could you guys see Glenn selling gym equipment?
Oh, I could do it, dude. Are you kidding me? You put something in front of me, I'll sell it.
They're business partners, apparently, I think. And
okay,
they're working on some gym equipment or something.
See, look at me acting like I don't know what you're talking about. I know. It's me. It's me, ladies and gentlemen. But no, I'm super excited to talk about something other than Lamar to start the show. And I mean, look, if you're looking for draft coverage, if you want to be accurate, if you want to make sure you know what's going on from top to bottom of the draft, there's really no person better and more equipped to help you out in doing so than Jason Pruitt over at DraftPlex, who was, of course, voted the most accurate mock drafter not too long ago. So excited to have Jason back. So let's welcome into the show Jason Pruitt. Thanks so much for joining us, sir.
Hey, how are you guys? Good to be back.
Yes, sir. Excited to see you because this is an important draft for the Ravens. They don't have the normal stockpile of picks that we're used to. In fact, I think this is the first year I can remember in quite some time where no comp picks were awarded to the Ravens. Now, of course, next year got quite a few coming on the horizon with all the the recent players that have left, but only 5 picks this year. Of course, they traded their second rounder to the Bears to acquire Roquan Smith. So if you look at it that way, that's their second round pick. I think most people will be happy, but nonetheless, only 5 draft picks. So the thought is the Ravens have to nail all 5, Jason. So the first thing I want to do is just kind of get a general feel for this draft and its strengths, its weaknesses. Is it a top-heavy draft? Is it a deep draft? And then what are some positions that you look at as going, well, it's pretty heavy at that spot, and then other positions where you go, man, it's kind of light in this spot. What do you got for us, Jason?
Yeah, I think this is very similar to last year's draft. I think there's a lot of depth. We don't have that many kind of top end, can't miss prospects coming in. I mean, people are trying to talk themselves into, like these quarterbacks and stuff. And we saw how that went last year. We had 2 go in the first the top 100, and the rest kind of slipped into the 4th, 5th round. So that makes me kind of nervous. As far as positional value, obviously it's a deep wide receiver group, deep cornerback group. We've gotten accustomed to that because that's where the best athletes end up. I don't think it's as strong probably on the interior defensive line. Ton of pass rushers. So if you want to grab one of those, you can probably get still a quality starting level player into the 2nd round, probably top into the 3rd round. Linebacker, not a good group this year. You got a couple of guys that probably will be okay, but no real standouts in the way where lock top 50 1st round type guys. Maybe 1 or 2 get into that top 40 range. And then a running back class. Running back class is really good, really deep. There's probably 10, 12, 15 of them. So that's going to stretch probably, early into day 3 to where you can get a starting caliber running back in this draft. So across the board, depending on what you're looking for, you might have better luck than not. One place I probably wouldn't look is probably interior offensive line.
Okay.
The guard class, not too strong. There's a few guys, as I mentioned to you guys kind of ahead of this, was that I need to go back and look at on that. And there may be a few players that can get shuffled around moving from, say, a right tackle into guard or, flipping sides and that kind of thing. So I need to reevaluate some of that. But the depth is good. And I think, as far as the Ravens go, the 1st round, you're probably going to be in no man's land as far as like what you're really looking for. But in those middle rounds, you should be able to get good value as the draft moves along. And then, we'll see. Maybe they try to wheel and deal a little bit and pick up some more picks. That's always an option, and depending on where the board goes and how the draft falls. So we'll see. But we'll start out kind of looking at everything as chalk and go through maybe who's there for these top 5 picks that we're going to start with for Baltimore.
And Jimmy, before you jump in, and DK, I'm hoping you can help a little bit with this in the back at the end, and maybe even throughout. If you guys have some individual players that you want to throw up in the chat, just to quickly, we're rapid fire. We'll get Jason's take on some of these. I already see a couple in, and so I'm definitely going to get to I got to talk about Bijan, but I don't want to jump on and step on Jimmy's toes here. But if you guys want to throw some up, we'll rapid fire Jason at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I wanted to jump right to that. That's funny because I had a list on my computer that as Jason was talking, I was like, all right, let me make sure I ask him about these. And the number one person on my board is not a surprise to anyone, a wide receiver. I just want to know if you think he'll be there. It's the kid out of Ohio State, Jackson Smith, and I can never say his last name properly. Is it Jigba?
Yeah, he won't. I don't expect him to be there. I think he's
dreaming.
Yeah, I think he's had a good showing for himself, after the year that he had, basically shutting down. But I had to elevate him because, I seriously had to consider him maybe getting into the top 10. I really don't think he gets out of the top 15. So, kind of look at the guys after that. There's always an outside chance. I mean, CeeDee Lamb wasn't supposed to go to Dallas, there later getting almost into the 20s and he was there. So depending on the flavors, you've got, guys that teams might like a little more. Maybe they like Jordan Addison at a USC. Maybe they like Quentin Johnston at TCU, Jalen Hyatt, Tennessee. I mean, some of these guys that they've cooled off a little bit through the process, whether it's because of size or, combine performance, that kind of thing. So it's flavors, right? Like what works for your team. I think we could see the possibility of a receiver going ahead of Jackson Smith and Jigba. In my mock, I looked at Zay Flowers as a fit for the Patriots, and he was the first wide receiver off the board. And then Jackson Smith and Jigba went right next to the next pick to Green Bay. So there's always a possibility of how it goes, and depending on, we've still got a month to go. There's a lot that can still happen.
Yeah, and I tell you what, I got to say this because I think one of the reasons that I get really excited, and I know Glenn does for sure, maybe more than me having you on the show, is because I think one of Glenn's 3 favorite days in the year is draft day.
Oh, for
has to
sure.
be draft day, the fantasy draft day, and Christmas.
That's it. And Thanksgiving's right up there. But yeah, you're right.
Top That's 3 it. For sure. So every time we get Jason on the show, Glenn knows the draft is right around the corner.
I love it. I almost get excited as the off season as I do the regular season.
Yeah, it's become its own thing, man. It's become its own thing.
You're full of hope and optimism and all these things. Right. But I asked you on a specific wide receiver, but let me ask you about the Ravens in general. Based on your vantage point, do you see wide receiver clear and above being their number one need, or is there, like, I also see corner as something they need to look at. I think that there are some other positions as well secondary to that. But how do you kind of rank the needs of the Ravens in general?
Yeah, I look at that slot where the Ravens are picking at 22, and you hit the top 2 needs in my eyes. I put cornerback a tick ahead because I think the value is going to be better at 22. So, the way I do my needs is a little bit different. I look at, okay, where would they probably address this in the draft? And I looked at corner that's most likely because I think the depth at receiver of what you can get, you can maybe go into the second round, into the third round. Maybe you move up from that third round pick since it's, there's a gap between when the Ravens pick first and when their next pick is. But there are some guys that get into that third, what I call like a 3-4 range. It's like every year, a couple of these guys will slip into day 3 and they'll be sitting there for you. But I looked at the cornerback room and, I see Marcus Peters is gone. Kyle Fuller is gone, or at least not re-signed yet. There's always a possibility of that. And then I look at a couple of guys whose names I remember from Dallas a couple of years ago that kind of just washed out completely. And, I guess you try to see if there's something there, but I'm like, I don't know if I can go into a season like that. And again, this is all fluid, right? But I looked at, where you're sitting, You might be down to your receiver 3 or 4, and you might be at cornerback 4 or 5. And you guys just determine that value. And I think if you come back around and look for a receiver, the difficulty with this class is there's not a lot of size. And we're starting to see that with the receivers is, you're not going to have to get 6'4", 220, that kind of thing. But when everybody's 170 pounds, I liken this class a little bit to like that Hollywood Brown draft where like the receivers just were not, it just wasn't there. Like, I don't really see like a true wide receiver 1 type in this class. I know a lot of people like Quentin Johnston to be that guy. I don't know if I see that or not. And then the rest are more of your, slot type receivers, which obviously there's a place for that in this game, but the Ravens have a lot of smaller receivers already. So do you add one more and you just create a logjam of those type of guys? If that works in your offense, you can make it work. We've seen what like Kansas City can do. But it doesn't seem like that's worked so far for the Ravens over the past few years. If we're in this position where like we're constantly looking for a receiver and constantly trying to get one in the first round. If you were to ask me in terms of going like a best player available in the first round, it's probably not going to be a receiver at 22.
Mm-hmm.
And you see obviously one of the hot names for who that might be that's still going to be on the board from my neck of the woods. But I don't know if you can go there either because of the value of that position, with Bijan Robinson out of Texas.
Yep.
But you have to look at somebody like Philadelphia or Detroit or, another team like that who, Philly obviously has a strong roster. They were in the Super Bowl. They're picking at 10. I strongly considered that with my first round mock is like they could take Bijan, but I don't know that their positional value definitely plays into their draft strategy. We've seen that year after year. Like, I don't think they've taken a linebacker, even though they desperately needed linebackers over the course of the time that I've been doing that, never did it. And then running back, despite, the talent that Bijan has and what he can bring to a team, look at the Super Bowl teams and who's leading them in rushing. And it's not Derrick Henry. It's not Nick Chubb. It's not Ezekiel Elliott, whoever you want to go up and down the list. Those teams aren't getting there. They've been on the cusp, but when you're looking at running back, especially this class where you can get, a starting caliber back, is Bijan that generational, to throw out that word that comes out every year of somebody that's like that? Could he be? Yeah. Could he be Saquon Barkley? Sure. But, you have to evaluate that against what else you can do with that and maybe look at what you can do later on because, especially for a team like Baltimore, again, with the number of picks that they have, is that going to make that big of an impact on what you're doing? I don't know. That's for the front office to decide.
Now you just to give it away here, you did mock Maryland cornerback Deonte Banks, which is always exciting to see a Terp become a Raven. Nothing wrong with that. But I also noticed that he is the third corner you have coming off, or the fourth corner you have coming off the board, with 2 going. You have 2 going in the top 10 and 3 total. Looks like in the top 20. So is that really a value to get the 4th or 5th best corner in the first round? Or do you think they're doing that because that's such a need? Like, why do you have that penciled in when that's, in your estimation, the 4th best corner?
Best player available at a position of need. If you're going straight best player at that point, yeah, it would be Bijan, sure. But again, you have to weigh that. And again, the way that I see these receivers, the 2 that I have first round grades on, they're already gone. And then you're kind of picking the next couple of guys. And you have to weigh those needs. So for me, like I said, it was looking at kind of what the depth chart as is now and seeing, can you slot in a guy and, Banks is like a bigger physical corner. He's fully, traits. And that's happened before with like Marlon Humphrey, who's turned into a pretty good player, obviously. So, I mean, it's kind of coming down to those 2 positions, because I think if you don't get a guy there at either one of those, you're probably not going to find one in the 3rd round at 86. So there's a lot of these different factors that you have to weigh in to make that decision. I think, you would hope with your passing game that, Bateman comes back and he can he can continue to develop. You've got Mark Andrews, you've got a couple of the smaller guys, and those guys are going to be there. And then if you get into the third or fourth round, there's a couple of projects that you can try. But if you go to corner, you're probably not getting a starting corner in the third round that you can just for sure say he's going in there and he's going to be the guy opposite Marlon Humphrey. So that was kind of my logic there. But again, it came down to wide receiver corner. That's really for me what all was being decided on in the first round for Baltimore. So it was kind of like my pick 'em based on how I feel about the cornerback class versus how I feel about the wide receiver class.
Gotcha. Well, and let me ask you this, Jason. I think everybody will remember the iconic moment when we drafted Odafe Owe. Certainly we had some different reactions on this show, but
yeah, you were devastated.
I was absolutely. I think I damaged Glenn's eardrum for.
Oh my goodness, it's so loud. It's so loud.
But really, the question I have is: are there at either of those positions, wide receiver or corner, because those seem to be the clear and above needs in round one for the Ravens? Are there any guys in there that are high post combine and invites, or not invites, excuse me, interviews and other things that you're not hot on, that you're like, this guy, is on bust alert?
Yeah, I have had a hard time with Quentin Johnston.
And hands, right?
Like I said, yeah, with this the one receiver at that, in that tier that has the size, I don't know if I can do it. I still think he goes in the first round, but he's probably like a not for me type. Let somebody else draft him. And then, as far as coming out of like the combine, struggling with a lot of these guys that are very light. Jalen Hyatt, who, you would have thought maybe been around 185, 190, comes in under 180. And you worry about his fit in an offense compared to what he was doing in college. For me, I like Tyler Scott out of Cincinnati, but there's another guy who's like right at around 6 feet, right around 177 pounds. So these lighter guys, which again, maybe this is trending in that direction, but I had a harder time with that. I love Zay Flowers, and I know he has problems with drops, but his explosiveness is different than anybody else in this class. And I can live with that, but that's why I'm higher on him. And until, JSN had his, kind of coming back out party at the combine and over the course of the pro day, I was like, for me, Zay Flowers is the top wide receiver.
Isn't Zay Flowers that the guy that put on like a ton of weight?
Yeah, he was like the 170 and he came in, I think 182, and he's like rocked up and everything. So, I mean, you can tell he put in the work, and, some of the guys that have come through, you can tell didn't, whether they came in heavy or they came in a lot lighter. And, you see stuff like Bryce Young shows up at the combine, he's 204. I bet he wasn't 204 his pro day, right. Just trying to get on the scale.
Yep.
And then like for cornerback, I really like Emmanuel Forbes, Mississippi State, but he came at 166.
Gosh.
And I was
160.
like, for me, I'm like, oh man, I love, because I was like, he's a top 5 corner for me, and somebody that like for the Ravens at 22, if he comes in at like 180 all day, take him. I think he's better. I think he's better than Banks. I think he's better than Cam Smith.
Ringo.
And he's better than Ringo. I had him right underneath the top 3, which is Gonzalez, Witherspoon, and Porter.
Yeah.
Do you think really, Jason, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. Do you think really something like 20 pounds scratches him off the list for I'm not saying maybe for you, but like, you think Eric DeCosta's really looking at this like,
and don't they know they're fattening up for the scales and they're not going to be playing at that weight?
Well, that's the thing, is like for him at 166, did he put on weight? Because he's very skinny on tape, and you see that, but he's held up. It's not like he has, injury history, but it's something that, every team has their thresholds, whether it's arm length or hand size or weight, height, height, weight, speed guys.
Well, we certainly like our big physical corners. I mean, we've drafted Tavon Young, of course, was a real small guy, but if you go back and look at our corner, you talked about Marlon Humphrey. I mean, this dude is, I think, the most physical corner there is, and maybe the most physically gifted from like you talk height, weight, speed standpoint.
Just a linebacker playing corner.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous, right? So that might be a tough sell for EDC to sell him on that guy.
I just feel like for him, I had to take into account because again, I do this differently than most people as they evaluate. I'm like, where is he going to get drafted relative to what teams look for?
Yeah.
And I don't think they're there yet to where they're going to draft a cornerback at 100. They're going to think, well, he can't play against the run. He's going to get, bullied around when he plays against bigger receivers. He played in the SEC and obviously held up. And he's really the only top corner that had a lot of ball production. He had, double-digit picks over the course of his career, and the guys at the very top didn't. I think Witherspoon, one of them had 4 and the rest had 1 for their career interceptions, and maybe that's because they're not getting thrown at. But I had to bump him down. I was like, man, he probably won't go in the first round, so I have to kind of bump him down to 2. And Clark Phillips from Utah, same thing, but the opposite way. He's very compact, very short, very short-armed. So, every kind of box against him, but he's a great player. But you see that stuff in the past draft history, and you have to go with the trends of like, he's, talent-wise, he's probably the first round, but teams aren't always just gauging this on talent. They have their list of things that the boxes they have to check, and he's probably not going to check those boxes, which probably puts him into, late second round or maybe even into the third. But both of those guys, I think talent wise, should be in consideration at the end of the first round. I just don't think they're going to be.
Yeah. Now I know that Ravens fans, they're excited to see Ajabo on the field with Odafe Owe and see what that looks like. I know you had a chance to look at Ajabo last year, and so I think we're getting a boost to the pass rush unit. But I'm going to ask you about, because I'm shocked. It looks like you're predicting there could be up to 12 pass rushers taken, or at least it earned a second round grade for you, which to your point about that being a deep position, I don't see many other positions that go 12 deep as the second round. But quickly, I want to get to Azena's super chat here. It says losing Lamar for 2 first round is a fireable offense. Understandable that first part there. Don't disagree there. EDC better match any and everything. Mark and Bateman are 2/3 of a good core. JSN at 22 is my dream fit. So, I think all that first top sentence there, 100% agree. I think Eric will match everything, and that's why they've been very confident to allow him to go test his market, because they think we already have the best deal, and if they want to give you a little bit better deal, we'll just match it and let them do all the hard work of configuring it. But I agree in that last part. Mark Andrews and Rashad Bateman, just look what the Chiefs did. They had Travis Kelce and a bunch of threes. And unless you want to tell me Tony, they go get Tony, and he's got some explosiveness and all that, but he's he was pretty unsure about his time in New York. Mm-hmm. So it looks like the Ravens aren't that far away from mimicking them, but the only difference is, they have Pat Mahomes, and Pat Mahomes can certainly lift the level. Now we agree, and we believe that Lamar has that ability as well, but right now we're not so sure he's going to be here. But I think you've already mentioned JSN. Is there any chance he gets to 20? What's the furthest you see him dropping?
Right.
Sure. I mean, I'd have to go back through. I think probably the cap might be 18 for Detroit at the second pick, because you have to kind of clear a minefield of teams that should be looking at receivers but don't necessarily have a history of doing that. Like Green Bay, I don't think they ever gave Aaron Rodgers a first round receiver, and it would be ironic for them to do it like if he's on his way out the door.
Yeah.
I did it. I do it every year. It never comes true. So I think you'd have to come up from 22. I think.
Let me ask you this:
frame it that way.
Would it be a bigger surprise if he gets down to 22, or that Kyle Hamilton was available at 14 last year?
Ooh, that's very close. I think positional value, Kyle Hamilton, didn't have the best process going through if you're going just based on the numbers. So it was a mild surprise, especially how he was talked up at the beginning before we went into that, to where he's like top 5, top 10 to get there at 14. And again, you have to look at like the wide receiver market, who's getting paid and who's still out on the street, and who's trying to get a new contract and what they're getting. And I think we're starting to see that cool off a little bit, unless you're like a top tier, top 5, top 8, top 10 receiver, you're not really going to get the kind of contract that you might expect. So looking at this class, again, it's starting to go in this direction where teams are going to be like, I can find a receiver in the second round, the third round.
Mm-hmm.
Should I use that on offensive linemen, which they aren't hard to come by, pass rushers, corners, quarterbacks, obviously, those kind of diamond positions where a team has to have a guy here, 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 and here in order to just compete for a championship. And receivers, not that they're a dime a dozen, but it's like I can get one next year. There'll be a guy next year like this. Let me go over here and address this, and then try to find somebody else, or get OBJ off the street or whatever to fill a role for you. But yeah, I mean, to Glenn, to your point with the pass rushers, I think it's the same thing. You're seeing where all the good athletes are going in the positions, and it's easy to tell. And for this class, it just happens to be really deep at those positions, as well as something like tight end, which we never see that. We might see 5 top 100, and I have about 8 at this point, and there's probably a couple more that can contend for that. But as far as the receivers go, it's hard for me to look at any of these guys other than probably Jackson Smith and Jigba and say he's not going to be there for the Ravens. I think every other one does have a chance to be there, more so than him. But there's always an outside chance.
I'm starting to develop a theory about the Ravens, in that they, like a lot of teams, the Ravens do not want to pay a wide receiver.
Yep.
Obviously we saw that with Marquise Brown, and I don't know if the Ravens are on board with the new value or the new contracts that wide receivers are getting. So if you're going to be aggressive and move up for one position, I'm starting to think that they would do it there, because they're like, well, we can move up, give up some capital, take a wide receiver. But the advantage would be, of course, you got them under control instead of trying to go out and pay a guy. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. I'm looking forward to it. All that being said, the Ravens have 5 picks.
Yeah, I think it's going to be more than 5. I think with Jason talking about how the positional value at 22 isn't there for a lot of these guys, would that positional value be like, do you see that value being a lot higher if they're able to trade back, even at the tail end of the first, or worst case scenario, if they really want to, stock up picks in the later rounds, trade into the second and get a stockpile? What's the second round looking like as far as, the positions of need, which I think, if they don't, let's say they address corner in the first round, what's second and third round looking like if they do trade back? Because currently they have no second round picks, but I think I got a feeling they're going to move back to the tail end of the first round and pick up an additional late second round pick. So I know you mentioned they're smaller, but is there a guy that you think that, man, you know what, if he just gets with the right team, if he gets with the right coaching and he develops, physically in the gym, he might turn into a guy that teams look at as their number one? Because we still got Bateman here.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm more comfortable the later it gets into the first round, into the second, kind of in that top 40, top 50 range, with probably 8 receivers, including the ones we've talked about. You have, Jalen Hyatt, you have Jordan Addison, Tyler Scott, who I mentioned, who I think I'm a little bit higher on than maybe some other evaluators. And then you get into guys like Cedric Tillman, who is kind of the big body, he's pro ready from a physical standpoint, but he's just not, he's, I don't know if he's quite a number 1. He might be a high end number 2. And then you have Josh Downs from North Carolina, who's your typical slot receiver. And that's where I had the difficulty with what the Ravens already have, trying to pinpoint one of these guys, because, even Jackson Smith and Jigba, he's been done a lot of his production has been out of the slot. And are you going to add him to that? You could, definitely, for sure. But it just depends on how your offense works. And that's where a lot of these guys are. Jordan Addison. Jalen Hyatt, I think, is an outside. I don't think he's like a 50-50 guy, but he obviously has speed. And then you get into, Jaden Reed from Michigan State, Tank Dell, who's not very big, but very dynamic. A.T. Perry is a guy that I think is really interesting from Wake Forest, and he's more of a bigger receiver as well. Big catch radius, that kind of thing. So somewhere in that mid to late second round could be an option. And if you wanted to, maybe have to do the thing where you reach on him early in the second, just because you won't get back around to him, that's a possibility. Rashee Rice at SMU, another bigger, not not huge. We're not talking huge, but relatively speaking for this class, I think he's 6'1", and let's see what I've got him at, 6'1", 204. So at least he's over 200 pounds. He's over 6 feet, and that works for them there. And then you've got a couple other guys kind of in that range as well. So once you get in the second round, I think you could feel more comfortable about that. The draw of the first round is obviously like the 5th-year option. As we mentioned, the contract situation, like you can secure a guy for 5 years. But again, what are you passing on? From the Ravens standpoint, does it make sense to get like another tight end? I don't know.
Oh, no. No. If they draft a tight end, it's going to be they're going to storm the castle.
Yeah. I was just like, are they just going to have a full, tight end package? Well, I don't know if that would be like a 14 offense.
Yeah.
I looked at that. I don't even think they're even going to touch
14.
Tight end. They have enough guys. But again, that's where the depth is. So if you're going to trade back, I think both positions of like corner and wide receiver, you'd still be okay at.
Good.
But the opposite side is that you've got to have a team that wants to come up, and what are they coming up for? Yeah. I think what it could be is maybe an offensive tackle. Mm-hmm. I think that's probably the one position where you can't really afford. I think you're going to see four offensive tackles go in the top 20. You might have up to 6 going in the first round. And I think that's starting to be a trend because those offensive linemen are hard to find.
And getting paid. So
yeah,
the more the merrier. I want to see all the tackles going because we know that we're pretty good at tackle. So the more the merrier.
And just like you said, Jason, I mean, the more that these guys get paid in free agency, the higher their draft demand is going to be because the discrepancy between paying a guy on a rookie deal and paying Laramie Tunsil is just ridiculous.
That dude, we got to give that dude some credit, man.
No kidding, man.
Yeah.
Hey, Laramie Tunsil's got an agent, right?
Nope.
Laramie Tunsil doesn't have an agent?
I don't think he does.
I thought he did. Oh, dang. My whole point is just shot in the foot.
I don't think he does. I think if I remember correctly, he negotiated that deal, but he did so with Houston, right?
Yeah.
They don't know what the hell they're doing.
His first one was with Bill O'Brien.
They don't know what the hell they're doing over in Houston. I mean, let's be honest. But I do want to get your opinion on the guard position in case, because the Ravens did see one of their guards move on to Denver. Yeah. And shout out to him. This guy came from nothing. Everybody wanted him off the team, and he turns into a heck of a guard and gets absolutely paid by Denver. But it does, we have some guys in house like Ben Cleveland, that I think the Ravens are still hyped about, but they need some more depth there. And Ben Cleveland's had some issues where he just hasn't been on the field consistently. So I don't imagine them addressing that early, and you mentioned it's pretty slight in the interior offensive line position, but do you look at any guys that you could say they could slip to the middle rounds that you say, man, in this system, in a system like the Ravens, of course, we don't know what this is. I just remember we got a new offensive coordinator here, so it might look a whole lot different, but do you see a guard in the middle of the rounds that might be able to help the Ravens?
Yeah, I think it's just this class isn't top heavy. You're not going to have Quentin Nelson or Zach Martin coming out of this, but you have guys that have starting quality talent. I look at a couple of guys that might need to move inside from tackle. I'm really high on Matthew Bergeron being a guard, and he's from Syracuse. And I know he started to kind of get a little bit of buzz to maybe late in the first round. But he has his movement skills are really good for an offensive tackle. And so that's one that I would look at as far as like if you're going to do a lot of pulling or if you're going to do a lot of trap game, that kind of thing. I think he could do that. Cody Mock was everybody's favorite at the Senior Bowl because he has the long flowing red hair and he's missing his 2 front teeth. I had him actually going in the first round because I tried to do my mock a little different and look at the way the board usually goes for how I lay it out and who actually gets picked, and it kind of goes across the spectrum. It's not always down the list, and you see a lot of that. I have top 40 players and 32 of them are going the first round. It doesn't always go that way, and I think he's probably more of a mid-second round guy, but I had him going to Philadelphia. But he's a guy that could probably play 4 positions for you. You could go left or right at guard or tackle. As far as proper guards coming in, I really liked Andrew Voorhees, and then he ended up getting hurt at the combine, tearing his ACL, and then he still put up like 38 reps on the bench on one leg.
Awesome.
So as far as the maybe in that second round to third round range, I think that's where you'll see probably Osiris Torrance and Steve Avila, and these are 2 like big Hoss type guards that are going to push people around. That's where they're probably going to go. Another guy I like who I think is going to move inside is Braden Daniels from Utah. As we mentioned, he's played left tackle for them, but he pops on tape as far as his movement skills as well. But I think he's a better guard. He's a little bit undersized. But again, taking a page from, like Philadelphia and these other teams that can get away with movement and things like that on their offensive line. I think he would do well in a scheme like that. From there, kind of I wouldn't say a hidden gem, but a guy that didn't get invited to the combine that I watched him. He's just kind of a big sloppy looking guard, but he does the work in there is Antonio Mafi from UCLA. Very big, hard to move. He pushes people around. I don't think he's probably going to go until like maybe day 3. If he goes at all, again, I had a top 100 guard that went like the second to last pick last year. So, it's always hard to see how these teams. And then I mentioned earlier in I think when we were chatting about Tyler Steen, who's getting a lot of buzz as a day 2 pick, and he's maybe another one of those 4 position guys that you could plug into any slot there. So there's some guys that you could grab getting into the 3rd or 4th round that I think could compete to be a starter next year coming in as a rookie.
Well, this is the last question I gotta ask you. It's not really it is draft related. The Colts are sitting there at 4. And it seems to be that, I don't know, Glenn, if I'm missing any names, but I think it's really the Colts and the Commanders at this point. I guess there are some other dark horses that people are throwing there. But when it comes to Lamar Jackson, what's your take on the Colts, whether or not they should be serious players in Lamar, or is there a quarterback that they can get? We'll assume that they don't jump up, trade with Arizona or anything like that. They hold pat at 4. Is there a quarterback that you believe that they should believe in instead of making, a potential deal with the Ravens, or should they go all in on getting a Lamar Jackson?
I think they're setting up to draft Anthony Richardson from Florida. I think that's what they're going to do, and I think everybody else has caught on to that. They have Shane Steichen, who's their new head coach, who was in Philadelphia. They brought Gardner Minshew over from Philadelphia, and I think he's going to bring an offense similar to what they did to get Jalen Hurts to where he is now. Not that they're the same type of player, but it's certainly shaping up looking like this is probably what's going to happen. Me personally, I had a really hard time with Anthony Richardson and Will Levis, and I still do. I had to move them because I'm like, I think they're going to go there. I don't think we're going to see this all 4 of them go in the top 5. I don't think that's going to happen. As far as teams that should be in play for Lamar, I think there's a number of them that at least should have tested the waters of, putting a deal out there for him. Cause I think as our chat came up, 2 first-round picks for a former MVP who's still like in his prime,
crazy
takes, man.
It's fireable. It's a fireable offense.
Oh yeah. It shouldn't even got this far, and having some, some knowledge of that with like where the Cowboys ended up with Dak Prescott, they probably ended up setting the market with him 2 years later than they should have got that deal done. And it's only going to keep going up. So like, what's your hang up with wanting to re-sign him? If you don't think he's going to do the job for you, that's where you trade everything, you give the king's ransom, you go up to the top, you get whoever you want. I don't think this is the draft to do that. I was shocked that Carolina did that because I don't think they have the best roster in place right now. They don't have any receivers. The one receiver they had, they traded away.
Yeah.
And so, like what good is drafting a quarterback when you don't have a team around them and you're not necessarily at least having the appearance of doing anything around them to draft them. So as far as those two, I don't know if Washington, I haven't followed the news as closely. I don't know that they're necessarily in on it. Obviously that's what they've continued to try over the past few years, to put somebody in there that can play quarterback.
Well, a lot of people are saying that he can just do the deal, sell the team, and
be like double middle finger to all the other owners that don't like him.
Fair enough. I mean,
I'll open up the Pandora's box and let everyone have guaranteed, because that's the issue, Jason. Lamar Jackson wants more than Deshaun Watson got, which is double what anyone else has gotten.
And that's fair. He's got a case for that. I mean, to be honest, with the market, I mean, Daniel Jones wanted to make more per year than Patrick Mahomes. Okay, bro. But that's where the market is going. And, he signed that deal, but, it's only going to continue to go up. We're at 40, 45 at the top contracts. That'll be 50 in a year or two. So
it's not the annual salary. It's the fact that one guy's got 230 and the next closest has got 118.
Yeah.
He wants 231, and the owners are going, yeah, but if we give you 231, then guess what the next quarterback's going to want? 232, and then guess what the left tackles are going to want? Fully guaranteed. Then the corners want fully. So then everyone's going to have fully guaranteed deals, and that's what the owners are terrified of, right?
Yeah. Then Mark Davis can't have a team anymore.
Yeah, he's got to sell. Yeah. My man Isaiah, what's up, buddy? Appreciate you watching.
But Jason, I guess my last question for you is this. First of all, I like the process that you have, because I think that's really what we all go through, right? It's not just about ranking the players, but when you're making your picks, what do the teams usually do? What's the historical data, and things like that. Right now, as of today, you haven't taken a corner, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Do you believe that they stay at there, or do you agree with Glenn that it's more likely than not they move back and pile up some more picks? What's your take on that?
I think the value would be to trade back, and I wouldn't say that every time, but you've got a couple of positions where you would be okay. And if I were to say like what could drive a team to come up, I think it's an offensive tackle. And if some team wants to gamble on Will Levis, because I think he's going to be there, I had him going to the next pick to Minnesota. And maybe somebody looks at that because it's like, well, how much further are you going to get with Kirk Cousins? I don't know. Plus, he's only got 1 year where it's really like left on his contract where you kind of can ride with that. I don't think Will Levis is going to be ready to start. I don't know that he'll ever be. Yeah, he looks good. He can rocket a ball, but like
Zach Wilson.
No, he's like the big strong strapping lad who can fire the ball 70 yards down the field. Man, Mel Kiper loves him. I don't know. I had a hard time with him, and I'm just like, I don't know if anybody would take him in the first round. And he's got like, his awareness, his pocket presence, his accuracy. Throwing a lot of interceptions in college is hard.
Yeah.
If you're at the level
there's a lot of space in college.
Yeah, and I don't know, like as far as the way this class last year, I had to sit with, because like I kind of let myself get talked into, these guys are going to go high. They're going to, Malik Willis is going the first round. I think when I first looked at Malik Willis, I had him kind of in the 2-3 range. And then I was like, by the end, I was like, well, they're talking him up enough. It's got to be something to that, for people that are in the know. And then he went in the third round. The only first round quarterback was Kenny Pickett. And I think for me, realistically, the only quarterbacks, Stroud and Bryce Young, are the only two that I think are kind of, I don't want to say worthy, because like everybody has their different evaluations of it, but I had a really hard time with Anthony Richardson, because what you see are splash plays, and I've gotten myself talked into it. Not that I think he's that much better of a prospect, but I feel like the evaluation of him is like, I can make this guy work. I can develop him. And Will Levis, I have a harder time with at this stage, because I don't know that I see anything outside of the physical tools, which look great, but like, what are you going to do with the rest of that? What goes on up here? What goes on right here? And is that starting caliber? And I didn't see that. So,
well, look, ladies and gentlemen, when you want the inside scoop, you go to DraftPlex. Things like this is the reason why. If you guys haven't noticed, Jason's a deep thinker.
That's right.
And that's just one of the reasons why he's so accurate as a drafter. So we're so grateful.
Look, Mel 15 minutes away from me, Mel Kiper. I'm not calling Mel. I'm not knocking at Mel's door. I go to Jason, okay, because I want accuracy. Mel looks good on TV. He's got the hair that's about 7 inches off the top of his head.
Helmet head, dude.
Yeah, I mean, I like
Mel. Like a Los Angeles Rams.
Mel's a neighbor, but
he's the godfather. He kind of started this all for us. But
the land of pleasant living, baby. He put us on the map, so we got to shout him out for that. But Glenn's right. I mean, look, if you want to get it done and you want to you want to know what these teams are doing, what the Ravens are doing, get the good stuff. Right. Go right to DraftPlex. Jason, where can the folks find what you're working on?
Website is nfldraftplex.com. Got the full slew of content there. Just put the mock draft out really late last night, so technically it was today. Top 100, a full board. Right now we're at 330 with everybody in the combine kind of slotted, as well as a few non-combine participants. I got a lot more to go through there. So if you want to look through everything that I've got, it's on nfldraftplex.com, and you can follow me at DraftPlex on Twitter. So that's where I am. And then, I'm a regular guest here on 410 Sports Talk.
Awesome. No, we greatly appreciate it, man. As always, thank you so much. Have a great evening. Say hello to the family. Say hello to Cowboys Nation for us. The weather's got to start heating up down there soon, right?
It was 85 today, so we're starting to get there, but we'll see. But as far as the draft weather's starting to get a little hot in here too.
I love it. Awesome, man. Appreciate it once again. Have a great evening. We'll talk soon, Jason.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, it doesn't get any better than DraftPlex. So I certainly always appreciate him coming on here. The bummer about it is it just seems like a draft where it's just not, the stars aren't necessarily aligning for the Ravens. This doesn't look like a draft where, sometimes it just works out to where we have a need and a player falls at that position. Maybe it's a position that isn't looked at as valuable across the league, and that guy just falls into the lap. I look at Linderbaum last year. I mean, that guy, we needed a center, desperate at center. We get this great center that just falls right to us at a spot where no other team was willing to take him. And
right, he was in the perfect spot in the matrix.
Exactly. But this year, it seems like, I mean, man, taking the fourth best corner at 22, I mean, I get it's a need, but it's just making me more and more think that the Ravens are going to trade back.
Yeah, I can see it. It's interesting because I try and get DeCosta's thoughts, and I know he hates not having a second. He talked about that, but then the way that he talked about how well they hit on that last draft with only have 5 picks, with McAllister being that top pick. And I think they also took Roll in that pick as well.
Samari Roll was not a drafted player.
Oh, shoot, you're right.
We got him.
Who am I thinking of? There was somebody else. Oh, Edmund Mulatala, I think, was also in that draft.
Yep. Third round, right? Or fourth round.
First autograph I ever got. Edmund Mulatala, yeah.
Legend.
Anyway, so, yes, what I'm trying to say is that I feel like I'm on the fence, so whether or not I think they're going to stay or really try to pile up some picks. But ultimately, it's going to come to how it falls that evening, right? How things go.
And what happens with Lamar? I mean, that's still...
I'm still hopeful. I don't know what you're thinking. Really quickly, I know we're going to get into Lamar, talk Lamar a couple minutes, and that's why you guys are here, a lot of you. But this is the other thing I got to say, Glenn. What's your take on my theory? I think if the Ravens really don't want to pay a wide receiver and when he hits free agency, wouldn't it make sense to be a little more aggressive for a guy if you're really in love with him in the draft and you realize he's not going to get there more than maybe another position?
Yeah, I can see that, but I also believe that the Ravens have some apprehension spending so many top picks at wide receiver.
But what if you don't do it? Think about not doing it. What the blowback will be if, here we go again.
Here we go. Especially if we take a tight end. If we take a damn tight end in the 4th round and don't draft a single wide receiver and then go defense, everything else, great. Typical Ravens. Put all your money and resources to defense.
Now Lamar's got to come in and save the offense.
Yeah, no, I think they need to address the wide receiver position, but I also don't want to see them just address it because it's such a need that they take a guy way ahead of where he should be and pass up on a far more talented player. So I'm so torn because I want them to add a 1st-round receiver, but I look at their track record and I go, it's probably not going to work out that great. And I'd rather them take a position that I think will work out and that they'll hit on. And look, I know we have Bateman and we got Duvernay. That's the way I look at our receiving core. We got 2 guys. We got 2 guys.
Both coming off foot injuries.
Exactly.
Surgery,
foot injuries that can linger where, it makes you concerned. And then I go free agency. Not looking good. Looking like maybe a 3 is the best of it. You're not going to find a 2 or a 1. So trading is really their only option. And great. They have to make a trade a year where they have 5 draft picks. Not easy to make trades when you have 5 draft picks. So it's just, man, the Ravens are in a really, really tough spot. And how do they add to their receiver room when they have no capital to go get one. There's none
Yep.
available. Even rumors. You're talking about Hopkins as a rumor who's going to need to give up. You're going to have to give up capital and salary cap, which I don't think the Ravens can really.
Yeah, apparently
do.
that Brandon Cooks trade helped. I don't know if you saw the report on that. Is that now they're starting to say that type of compensation is what
Which was what exactly?
a fifth and a sixth.
But if say the Ravens give up their fifth and sixth, now they have three draft picks.
Yeah,
that's insane.
But my point is that like originally it started with a second and something and a player, so that'll be interesting too. But I totally get it for sure. I just want to really quickly, and I do want to clarify one thing because I've noticed that DraftPlex was taking heat in the chat when he talked about the Hollywood Brown draft, the wide receiver draft.
Yeah.
He wasn't talking about how the players turned out, but how they were being
perception.
graded.
Yeah,
how they were being graded during the draft. Like,
right.
There's a difference. Obviously, all those guys ended up being really good players, but in the lead up to the draft, a lot of people were not. Obviously, they weren't projected to turn into those types of guys. So there's a difference there, and that's what he was referencing. So don't worry, guys. He's still got it. He's not losing it. Don't worry. But Glenn, let's turn the page real quick for that. We got a couple minutes here.
Yeah,
and we got to talk Lamar. And there's a development on Twitter right now. I don't know if you're on, but the Ken Francis thing just happens to be, it looks like Lamar just hoodwinked everyone all over again. I don't know if this is true or not, but he announced what am I trying to say? He made the announcement of his new product, the entire gym that he is that he's in business with Ken Francis on this product, right? And so now that he's got some steam behind his name and people are looking, he's starting to get him trending. Oh, then all of a sudden I'm going to drop my product on this. So pretty interesting here. I don't know if it was on purpose or not. I don't know if Ken Francis is actually reaching out to teams. What is your thought? Do you believe that Ken Francis is actually reaching out to teams?
I am so lost and confused.
Yeah.
And you know what? Before we put that up, I just want to quickly put up one quick thing. Sorry, DK. I think that was DK who put that up. But
yeah.
Basically, and I don't even think this was the original tweet, but a tweet came out saying that a representative close to Lamar Jackson was reaching out to teams to inform them that he is ready to move on from the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah.
And so, here's just an example of some of that. We can see here that, Tom Pelissero talked about the name you mentioned, Ken Francis, and, he tweeted out that this guy is now going to be negotiating 9-figure contracts with NFL teams. Now, Lamar Jackson quickly said that man's never tried to negotiate for me. So the question is, what was he doing? And then, of course, there had to have been some validity to this story because as DK is about to put up, the NFL released a memo basically stating that a non-accredited agent is not to be, you cannot negotiate with, you cannot have you can't really talk at all about a player's contract with a non-accredited agent. You can only talk to an agent or the player. That's it.
Right. And I'm glad that this is being brought up because we've talked about this before and we've got hammered before on this show. I forgot who it was. What's the name of the guy that we had on the NFL Network?
Steve White.
Yes. He reiterated the fact that Lamar Jackson's mom is not in the room. When he's having these conversations. She might be his business manager, business partner, whatever, but she's not his agent. I mean, she's not negotiating the contract because based on the NFLPA rules that you'll see here in this memo, you cannot do that if you are not the player or a certified agent by the NFLPA. So if this is true, which there has to be some validity to it, like you said.
His name is in the memo.
Right. Ultimately, what this means to me is that this is just bad business. Like, this is just a bad look for Lamar Jackson because all this time about holding out about an agent and everything else. And now you're basically using a guy as a proxy, right? Like as an agent. So in my mind, just go out and get a real one.
Like, why does he not? Here's the part I don't understand. I get that you may have trust issues and understandably so. I mean, this is a business and, they might say one thing and do another behind your back. So I get the trust issues. If you're going to have a guy reach out to tell teams, because here's what my thought process is. He's going, man, no one's giving me an offer sheet. Because his thought process is probably like, well, they're not giving me an offer sheet because they don't think I'm really ready to leave. They
Yeah.
think I'm using them to negotiate my contract with the Ravens.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he's trying to get the word out there like, look, if you guys give me a deal, I'm ready to move on. Now, this is
Yeah,
not
and
me.
it was probably Ken, the same guy that put out the report that came out on Tuesday from Mike Florio that Lamar's ready to move on from the Ravens.
Yeah, that's all he was probably saying is like, look, Lamar is ready to move on. So if you want to negotiate, this is not just him using you as a way to negotiate a deal between him and the Ravens. This is not him. But the problem is if you wanted to do that, why not hold an extensive interview process to find an agent, an accredited agent that you and your team feel comfortable with? I mean, this could have been any time during this 5-year rookie contract. He could have had a 5-year. I mean, he could have interviewed people over a year, and him and his family could have found the guy that they trust, the guy or gal that they trust, that is certified to do their negotiation. I don't know. It's just getting more and more confusing.
It's crazy to me. Yeah, because the hubrisness behind all of this in that, like, sometimes experience is worth paying for, right? Like it's impossible to be the best agent you can be, and the best football player you can be when you are inexperienced at it. I know that guys have gotten, obviously, you talk about Tunsil, you talk about D-Hop, you talk about even what's his name? Roquan Smith, right? These guys have done it, but Lamar is a quarterback. These are complex things. To me, this is just different. It's just a whole different animal. And so, it's really a tough situation because even, Glenn, you and I kind of talked about this. I just feel like, unfortunately, Lamar's getting bad advice. I think the NFLP doesn't care about Lamar Jackson.
The PA is trying to use him as a pawn. They're going behind his, and they're going, hey, man, you deserve it. You deserve it. But really, all they don't care about Lamar. They care about increasing the contract for every guy after Lamar. They're using Lamar. Like, they're using him, and it's unfair to Lamar. And the difference, people keep saying, well, Roquan didn't have an agent. He did fine. And Laramie Tunsil, he's done fine. But they're trusting. There's a level of trust where, like, Roquan said, all right, I trust the fact that Eric DeCosta is not going to give me some wise guy, lowball BS offer.
Yeah.
He knows his worth. He knows the market. I'm sure Roquan did his homework. I'm sure he has some, help, advisors that help him acquire all this information. Go, all right, this is what I'm not going to take lower than this. This is a reasonable offer. What Lamar Jackson is asking for is an offer that the owners don't want to look at as reasonable. They want to look at that outlier in Cleveland as just that, an outlier. If they start giving it to everyone, that's what it's not like the owners and everybody's saying Lamar Jackson's not a good player. They're saying we don't want to give anyone a fully guaranteed contract. And if we give it to one, we're going to have to give it to every single player in the future. It's only a matter of time. So it's like, this isn't like we don't like Lamar. We don't, and I wish I could have it. And DK, if you could try and find this morning, RG3 was on Get Up, and I love what he said. He said, because
how the team is, it's not that the relationship is even bad enough where it needs to be talked about as salvageable.
Yeah, he says, I don't even want to call it salvageable because it's not bad. They are still money in good terms. It's just Lamar thinks his value's here. The Ravens think it's here. And they're saying, if you can find a team that'll bridge that gap, we'll likely match. But we think our offer is the best out there that you will find. So we love you. We want you back. And we showed you that by this massive contract that we're giving you that's only second in guarantees to that one that we're looking at as an outlier. So it's not a disrespectful thing at all. They're not being mean or rude to Lamar. They gave him a monster deal to show him the love, but he wants the top ever. And no team is going to give him that. None. And that's what we're seeing right now.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree with you more. I think that's well put. The last thing I'll say is if you go to the website of the entire gym, it's not even a fully built website. Like, there are still editing areas where you can make edits and changes and add to sections, and it literally says it public facing. It's a problem. So, look, Lamar, I don't know what you got to do, whether that's an image consultant, whether that's an agent with a team and resources. You have so much horsepower and pull and such a platform behind you. I know that you want to do things on your own, but sometimes delegating is okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So all I got to say is figure out what you got to do to get this thing done. But it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. Glenn, I think that's it for us tonight, my man. I am feeling super sick and exhausted. So it was a fun one, though.
Hey, man, you're a trooper.
I'm trying.
Pretty obvious listening to you
I'm trying.
that you're not doing so well. So I appreciate you making it out for us after we took the day off on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing it out to us. And look, I'm hopeful that by the next time we talk that we will have some resolution. But
please.
I don't think we will, Jim.
Yeah, no, but we're going to keep hoping, and Ravens fans keep hoping as well. Let's get this thing done. Good juju is what we got to send, and hope that Lamar gets the right people around him. That's all we got tonight. Shout out to DraftPlex for coming out. Shout out, of course, DK as always for running the show in the background. Glenn, great job tonight. All you guys coming out, we greatly appreciate it. We will be back on Tuesday, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Have a good night.
See you.